While Washington debates defense budgets and sanctions, a new shadow is rising in the skies over the Middle East. Behind closed doors, China has struck a covert deal with Iran, one that could tilt the balance of power and directly challenge America's military dominance. The weapon? Not missiles, not drones, but cutting-edge fighter jet that could rewrite the rules of modern warfare. This is the untold story of how Beijing's secret jet deal may be arming Tehran for a showdown with the United States. Officially, China denies direct military support to Iran beyond limited cooperation, yet intelligence leaks and satellite imagery suggest something far bigger is happening. Reports indicate that Beijing has quietly agreed to supply Iran with advanced fighter aircraft, jets that rival the very warplanes flown by the U.S. and its allies in the region. Why would China take such a risk? The answer lies in strategy, not charity. By empowering Iran, Beijing gains a powerful partner against U.S. influence in the Middle East, while securing access to vital oil reserves and cementing a military alliance that Washington can't easily break. The aircraft in question is no ordinary machine. Analysts believe China is preparing to transfer the Chinese J-10C, a fourth-generation multi-role fighter equipped with advanced radar, precision-guided weapons, and beyond-visual range missiles. To put it simply, this isn't a hand-me-down relic. It's a combat jet capable of challenging U.S.-supplied F-15s, F-16s, and even the stealthier F-35s that dominate the skies of the Middle East. For Iran, whose Air Force still relies on decades-old American jets from before the 1979 revolution, the arrival of Chinese warplanes will be nothing short of transformative. Overnight, Tehran could leap from a struggling air fleet to one of the most formidable aerial forces in the region. For decades, Iran's military strategy has leaned heavily on missiles and drones. But these weapons alone can't guarantee air superiority. Without modern fighter jets, Iran remains vulnerable to U.S. and Israeli air power. That's where China steps in. By supplying advanced jets, Beijing gives Iran the missing piece of its military puzzle, air dominance. With this, Tehran can not only defend its skies, but also project power across the Persian Gulf, threatening U.S. bases, warships, and even oil routes that fuel the global economy. In Washington, whispers of the China-Iran jet deal are raising alarms. Military planners warn that a better-equipped Iran could spark a new arms race in the Middle East. Israel, America's closest ally in the region, views the development as an existential threat. Meanwhile, U.S. sanctions on Iran, once a powerful deterrent, are becoming harder to enforce as China and Russia step in to shield Tehran. For the Pentagon, this isn't just a diplomatic setback. It's a direct challenge to U.S. military superiority in one of the world's most volatile regions. Make no mistake, this jet deal is about more than Iran. It's about China's grand strategy. By arming Tehran, Beijing is creating pressure points for Washington far beyond the Pacific. While the U.S. focuses on Taiwan and the South China Sea, China is building influence in the Middle East, Africa, and beyond. If Iran takes the skies with Chinese jets, it won't just be a regional story. It will be a global shift. A shift where America no longer has unquestioned air superiority, and where alliances are redrawn in the shadow of rising superpowers. So as the world watches, a covert deal between Beijing and Tehran could change the future of warfare in the Middle East. Is this simply another arms transaction, or the spark of a new Cold War in the skies? One thing is certain. The age of uncontested U.S. dominance is being tested. And this time, the challenge may come not from Moscow, but from Beijing, flying under Iran's flag. But China isn't the only power with a hand in this game. Moscow, still entangled in its own war in Ukraine, quietly watches a China-Iran jet partnership with interest. For Russia, Iran has long been a vital partner, buying drones, missiles, and even offering access to air bases for strategic operations. If Chinese jets bolster Iran's air force, Russia benefits indirectly. A stronger Iran means greater pressure on U.S. allies in the Middle East, freeing Moscow to focus on Europe. In fact, some analysts suggest that Russia may even assist with pilot training and joint exercises, turning Iranian skies into a testing ground for Chinese and Russian technology. A Chinese jet in Iranian hands doesn't just affect Tehran and Washington. It rattles the entire Middle East. Saudi Arabia, already aware of Iran's growing missile and drone programs, could demand even more American-made F-15s or request advanced F-35 fighters. The United Arab Emirates, locked in a delicate balancing act between the U.S. and China, may be forced to choose sides. And Israel? For them, a modernized Iranian air force is an existential concern. Israeli strategists argue that if Tehran acquires Chinese jets, preemptive military action may no longer be a matter of if, but when. Yet the deal isn't just about hardware. It's about knowledge. Fighter jets require far more than engines and missiles. They demand pilot training, maintenance infrastructure, and electronic warfare systems. Some experts warn that if China begins transferring not only jets but also the know-how to operate and maintain them, Iran could become a hub of Chinese aerospace technology in the Middle East. And that created a nightmare scenario for Washington. Chinese-designed aircraft and radars operating just miles from U.S. aircraft carriers in the Persian Gulf. For the United States, the dilemma is stark. Confront China openly about arming Iran and risk escalating tensions with a global rival. Ignore it and watch Tehran's military rise unchecked. Already, Pentagon war games suggest that a future conflict involving Iran could be far more costly than anticipated if Chinese jets take to the skies. U.S. commanders now face a sobering reality. Air dominance can no longer be assumed. It must be earned. As this Covert jet deal unfolds, the stakes go far beyond the Middle East. Every delivery, every training mission, every radar installation is part of a larger story, the story of a shifting world order. China, by arming Iran, isn't just selling weapons. It's rewriting alliances, challenging decades of U.S. strategy, and reminding the world that superpower rivalry is no longer confined to the Pacific. It's global, and it's intensifying. So the question remains, will China's Covert jet deal push the Middle East into a new arms race, or spark a confrontation that could draw on the world's superpowers? One thing is certain. The skies over Iran may soon tell us how the future of global power will be decided. Months after whispers of the deal first surfaced, the world watches with bated breath. Satellite imagery confirms what many feared. The first Chinese-built jets are now rolling out of Iranian hangars. Pilots trained in secret by Chinese instructors climb into cockpits that symbolize more than just steel and technology. They represent a new chapter in Iran's defiance of U.S. power. Across the Gulf, American and Allied radar stations scramble to analyze every flight path. Each maneuver is studied, each takeoff logged. The balance in the skies is shifting, not in theory, but in reality. Suddenly, U.S. naval patrols in the Strait of Hormuz are no longer unchallenged. Every sortie risks an encounter with Iranian pilots flying Chinese-designed jets. A single miscalculation could ignite a confrontation the world isn't ready for. In Tel Aviv, the reaction is swift. Israel's military intelligence views Iran's new jets as a red line. For decades, Israel has relied on its qualitative edge in the skies, flying advanced U.S. F-35 stealth fighters. But with Chinese jets now in Iranian hands, the specter of an equal or at least a credible rival haunts Israeli defense planners. Quietly, discussions turn to contingency plans. Could a preemptive strike be the only solution before Iran fully integrates these warplanes into its arsenal? It's a chilling reminder that weapons don't just deter, they provoke. The United States now faces a dilemma sharper than ever. Sanctions alone won't ground Chinese jets in Iran, and direct confrontation with Beijing risks sparking a superpower conflict. So Washington turns the pressure on allies on oil routes, even on Beijing itself. Covert operations, cyber attacks, and sabotage suddenly move to the forefront. Some analysts argue the U.S. may never strike Iran directly, but instead seek to cripple the flow of parts, software, and training that keep the jets in the sky. It's a high-stakes chess match where every move risks escalation. And while this shadow war unfolds, the rest of the world pays the price. Oil markets tremble at every Iranian drill. Energy prices climb. The European Union, struggling with its own crises, is forced to take sides in a conflict that was never its own. In Asia, nations like India and Japan, dependent on Gulf oil, quietly worry. If the skies above Iran and the Persian Gulf erupt into war, global trade itself could be strangled. And so, With Chinese jets now in Iranian skies, the question is no longer if tensions will rise, but when they will explode. For the first time in decades, the United States faces a possibility of losing its uncontested dominance in the Middle East. The balance of power is shifting, and with it, the course of history itself. The first real test comes on a humid night in the Strait of Hormuz. A U.S. Navy carrier group patrols international waters when radar operators detect multiple fast-moving contacts, unfamiliar signatures, cutting through the dark. Moments later, Iranian pilots in newly delivered Chinese-built jets appear on U.S. screens. They're flying low, aggressive, and close. Too close. American F/A-18 fighters launch, intercepting the intruders. What follows is a deadly ballet in the skies. Iranian pilots lock radars. U.S. fighters respond with countermeasures. No shots are fired, but the message is clear. Iran is no longer shadowboxing with old relics. They are challenging U.S. power head-on. The next morning, Iranian state television declares victory, airing heavily edited footage of their jets flying alongside American fighters. Tehran boasts of chasing U.S. aircraft from the Gulf. The Pentagon calls it reckless and dangerous, but refuses to escalate. Yet every image, every headline, chips away at Washington's credibility in the region. For Iran, perception is power. And with Chinese jets in their arsenal, they finally have the visuals to back their narrative of defiance. Behind the scenes, a silent war intensifies. American intelligence agencies scramble to understand the full extent of the China-Iran jet deal. Are these fighters just imports, or is Tehran already setting up local assembly lines with Chinese engineers? Cyber operations target Iranian networks. Satellites focus on air bases in Esfahan, Bushehr, and Shiraz. But Iran has learned from China itself, masking activity with decoys, false hangars, and misinformation. Every day that passes without clarity deepens Washington's unease. In Riyadh, the Saudi royal family quietly presses Washington for guarantees. They want more F-35s, more Patriot missile batteries, more proof that America won't abandon the Gulf. In Israel, warplanes sit fueled and armed. Military planners debate whether waiting will only make the problem worse. Each day Iran integrates its new jets. The cost of stopping them rises. Meanwhile, smaller Gulf nations like Bahrain and the UAE fear being caught in the middle of a clash of giants. Their skies could become the first battleground. The world holds its breath when an oil tanker, flagged under a Western ally, suddenly reports harassment by unidentified aircraft in the Gulf. Minutes later, confirmation comes. The silhouettes match the profile of Chinese-designed fighters flying under Iranian colors. The tanker radios for help. U.S. jets scramble. The stage is set for a confrontation that could turn a covert arms deal into a global crisis. The Gulf erupts in tension. U.S. fighters race toward the distressed oil tanker, their sensors lighting up with warnings. Multiple Iranian jets in close proximity. Inside the cockpits, Iranian pilots lock radar onto the American aircraft, testing just how far they can push. For U.S. commanders, the rules of engagement are clear. Avoid firing first, unless the threat becomes unavoidable. For 10 long minutes, the world teeters on the brink. One wrong move, one trigger pulled, and the Gulf could ignite. And then, suddenly, the Iranian fighters break formation. Engines roar as they peel away, retreating into their own airspace. The tanker is left shaken, but unharmed. Officially, the U.S. declares the incident resolved without escalation. But behind closed doors, military analysts warn that this was no accident. It was a deliberate test, a demonstration of Iran's new confidence in the skies. A signal to Washington, to Riyadh, and to Tel Aviv, the old balance is gone. Thousands of miles away in Beijing, the news is met with quiet satisfaction. For China, there is no need for missiles or naval deployments. By simply arming Iran, they force the United States into a no-win scenario. Defend its allies at the risk of war, or hold back and appear weak. Each incident, each close call, draws America deeper into a strategic trap. A trap set not in the Pacific, but in the Persian Gulf. Washington responds the only way it knows how, by showing force. Carrier groups surge into Gulf. Joint drills with Saudi Arabia and Israel are announced. Billions in new arms packages are rushed through Congress. Yet the truth is hard to ignore. Overwhelming firepower no longer guarantees control. Not when adversaries are armed with the tools to challenge American dominance. Not when China has rewritten the rules of the game. The ripple effects spread far beyond the Gulf. Iran feels emboldened, tightening ties with Russia and China. Saudi Arabia inches closer to Beijing, hedging its bets. Israel accelerates its secret weapons programs, determined to keep its edge at any cost. And ordinary people across the Middle East watch nervously, knowing that one wrong move in the skies above could bring war to their doorsteps. The tanker incident was just the beginning. With every new patrol, every new drill, and every new jet delivered, the chance of mistake or a deliberate strike grows. And when that moment comes, the world may find itself pulled into a conflict sparked not by missiles or bombs, but by a single jet engine roaring over the Gulf. In the end, the Chinese jet deal didn't just arm Iran. It reshaped the balance of power in the Middle East. And as the world watched, one covert alliance proved that the future war could be decided long before the first shot is ever fired.